Hey everyone, it's Kelly. Thanks for joining me. I am back today with a new 12 by 12 scrapbook process video for the cut shop. And today I'm going to be using two cut files. I'm going to be using the up and down background cut file and also the spring fever cut file. I don't have a Cricut Design Space tutorial for this video because I didn't do anything extra fancy with the cut files. I just cut them on cardstock after I had them sized for the layout that I was creating. And as you can see here, I have the up and down background cut file already cut, and I used white cardstock, and I just have it on top of a piece of scrap paper that I had done some mixed media on that I didn't really care for because I want to add some stamping to this background. So I'm using a couple different stamp sets from Pink Fresh Studio. One is from the Felicity collection and the other is from the Dream On collection. I had meant to add the stamping before I pulled the cut file off my Cricut cutting mat, but I totally spaced that I was going to do the stamping. So I'm just using that mixed media paper just as a scrap piece of paper, just so that way I can stamp a few of these images kind of off of the cut file image to just add this random design to this background. I'm just going to use a few different floral shapes, a couple leaves, and then also a small flower to just create this random background. And I really had no rhyme or reason on why I was stamping the images in a certain spot. I was just trying to fill up this cut file image. So once I have the stamping to my liking, I'm going to grab a yellow piece of cardstock to use as the background. I'm going to audition a couple different colors just to try to figure out what I want to use as the background. I also thought about maybe using a pink background, but I thought that I was going to use a lot of pink embellishments, and I was afraid that the pink embellishments would get lost if I had a pink background also. So I decided to go with this yellow, and I'm going to use quite a few Pink Fresh Studio Felicity collection embellishments for the layout today. But before I move on to embellishing, I'm going to add some watercolor to those stamped images. So I knew that I wanted to add this watercolor before I even started stamping, so I made sure that I grabbed an archival black ink so that way the ink would not smear when I added the water to these stamped images. So if you want to add watercolor to stamped images, make sure that you check that the ink that you're using will not bleed once you add water to it. I want the colors to match the embellishments that I'm going to be using, so I grabbed the Pink Fresh Studio Felicity puffy stickers and just have them to the right of the cut file. That way I can be sure that the colors that I'm going to use will match the embellishments that I have chosen. And I'm just going to use a few different colors. I'm going to use a yellow, a couple pink tones, and then also a couple different green tones. And I'm really painting very haphazardly. I'm not paying close attention to staying in the lines. It's messy, it's going outside the lines, and that's how I wanted it to be. I didn't really want to have to focus on trying to keep everything within those stamped images, and I really like how that looks. It has that artsy, messy feel to it. I did also make sure that I had a paper towel handy because some of these colors were a little brighter than what I wanted them to be. So I'm just painting it on there and then taking the paper towel and dabbing up some of that extra watercolor before it dries on the paper. And I did not use any gesso on this cardstock. So I didn't want to add too much water because I knew that this paper would start to ball up and it could even tear if I put too much water on there. So I'm trying to be really careful on how much water I'm applying. So now that the watercolor is finished, I'm going to move on to getting my photo arranged and also getting my embellishments chosen. I do decide to use these Maggie Home butterflies, and I initially wasn't sure if I was going to use them. I felt like they were just a little large, and I didn't want to have just one on the layout. I felt like it would just stand out too much if I only had one on there, and when I put two of those butterflies on there, it just seemed to really overpower the layout, and I wasn't really sure if I liked it, but I do end up using a couple of those butterflies in the end. Now I'm just going through the die cuts that I have remaining from the Felicity collection, and it took me a little while to kind of figure out how I wanted to embellish because I have that stamped cut file background. It's pretty busy, so I wasn't sure how I was going to get the embellishments on there without making it seem really chaotic. So I decided to go into the 6x6 paper pad, and that's the Felicity collection paper pad. And I'm going to make some of the layers underneath my photo a little larger just to give me something to ground the embellishments on. So the photo that I'm going to be using today, that's actually a recent photo that I took and posted on Instagram, and it's just of me in my backyard. I'm sitting in the hammock and the sky's blue and the tree that's in the background is starting to bloom, and I have never been so ready for spring. It has been insanely cold this April. This whole winter has been very cold, and I've been seeing posts from friends on Facebook that live all over the country, and I have been noticing a trend with that where it's just been cold everywhere. And I normally am a fan of cold, rainy weather, and I know I've mentioned that previously, but I have never been so ready for warm weather. And this was the first actual warm day that we've had this month, and it was just, I think I took this picture on the 20th, so it was just recent. And I had just picked Aiden up from school, and we were just hanging out in the backyard. We usually take our two big dogs out after I pick them up from school. I actually take the dogs with us when I go to pick up Aiden, so they're in the car with us. And when we get home, we just go out into the fenced-in area in our yard, and we just hang out there for a little while and let the dogs run around and play. And I had gotten the hammock out, and Aiden and I were actually both sitting in it. And I snapped this photo, and I was just so thankful for the warm weather, just to have the sun shining. I was actually a little warm sitting out there, which I'm not complaining. I was actually pleasantly surprised at how happy I was that I was starting to feel a little hot when I was sitting out there. But I just wanted to document how ready I am for spring, and that it has just been insanely cold this winter. So that is what this layout is going to be about. So getting back to the layout, as you can see, I am working on the layers for my photo. I did add a layer of vellum, and then I do have those two 6x6 pattern papers from the Felicity collection that I have trimmed down. I've also grabbed a few puffy stickers from that same collection, and I have the second cut file on my desk there. It's not arranged yet, but it does say Hello Spring, and that is from the Spring Fever cut file. And I cut it in a hot pink cardstock that matches the pattern paper that I have behind my photo. I just wanted to bring in a little bit more pink. So I'm still just working on embellishing and just tucking in a few die cuts, and I did trim that circle die cut in half so that way I could position half of it at the top of the photo and half of it at the bottom of the photo. So it's at this point where I'm trying to decide if I want to add some machine stitching to that up and down background cut file. I was trying to decide if I just wanted to stitch it to the yellow background, but I decided that I do want to add some more dimension. So I trimmed down some fun foam to fit behind the cut file, and then just used liquid adhesive to adhere it to the background. Now I'm just using my T-square ruler to make sure that it is somewhat straight. I'm not usually one to worry about if things are perfectly straight, but I did want to make sure that this wasn't too off center. I'm actually going to adhere my photo cluster down slightly crooked, and I do that on purpose. I just wanted to add a little bit of tilt to the photo. I'm also going to add some 3D pop dots behind the title. I did want to elevate it from that background just a little bit more, just to create a little bit more shadowing. Even though that title is cut in that bright pink cardstock, I was a little worried that it was going to get lost on the background because the background is a little busy with all that stamping. And I thought about maybe tracing the title with a black pen, but I decided against it. And I think that you can see it. I think it stands out well enough. But when I was looking at it in my camera as I was making the layout, I was a little worried that it was getting a little lost on that busy background. But in the end, I'm happy with how it looks. So I'm looking at the layout, and I just really feel like it's not complete. I feel like it looks a little boring, that it needs some more embellishing. So I'm still trying to decide on whether or not those butterflies are too big, but I do decide to go ahead and use them. But then I thought only having two on the layout doesn't really create the visual triangle that I need. So I decided to bring that pink bird down and position it on top of that letter G. And I feel like since the butterflies are pink and that bird is pink, that will be enough of a visual triangle to draw your eye to the photo. So I'm going to bring up the still shots now. I do add just a couple things off camera. I add my journaling using my We Are Memory Keepers typecast typewriter, and I just cut it into strips and then adhered it to the bottom right hand side of the layout. And I did add a few small flower puffy stickers from the Felicity collection just scattered around the photo, again trying to create a visual triangle. So this is going to wrap this video up. I do want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with a new process video. I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye.